Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video. Disclaimer: none of the events mentioned are true. No idol has been harmed in the video, and any idol doesn't have a negative role. Let's start today's video. Minnie flinched, her eyes glistened. I had no choice. No choice? His hand shook as they clenched to his sides. You choose this. You choose to stand there and let men touch you. Let them. His words broke off too wild to complete. Her tears spilled over, her voice trembling. And what should I have done, Jungkook? Tell me. When you have thrown me out, and when you called me a liar, when you left me nothing, where was I supposed to go? How was I supposed to feel Jisoo? How was I supposed to buy her medicine? Her words struck in him like bows, each syllable tearing in his chest, but his pride, his anger, roared louder. So this is your answer? Selling yourself a filthy bar? Minnie staggered back as if he struck, her voice cracking with pain. I am not selling myself. I'm serving drinks, enduring humiliation so my daughter can survive. You think I wanted this? You think I won't die? Inside every night when men look at me like I'm nothing, her sobs shook her body, but she forced her words raw and jagged. I gave up everything, my pride, my dignity, because she needs me, because I have no one else, because you refused to believe me when I begged for help. Jungkook breath caught the farine, his chest twisted into something heavier, sharper. He remembered the night he had cast her out, the bitterness in his veins, the belief in betrayal. But standing here now, seeing her broken, her hands trembling, her eyes burning with desperation, something inside him cracked. Still, his voice came out harsh. He should have come to me instead of sinking to this. When he laughed bitterly through her tears. Come to you? The man who threw me out like trash? The man who believed lies over me? The man who looked at me with nothing but disgust? She shook her head, her tears falling faster. I came once, remember? I begged, and you shut the door in my face. Jungkook froze. The memory of her standing outside his home, her fragile figure trembling in the rain, flashed before his eyes. He had turned away, his chest heavy with anger, his mind poisoned with assumptions. His fist trembled, his throat closing. He wanted to deny it, to argue, but the truth glared at him mercilessly. Minhy's voice dropped to a whisper, broken and exhausted. I never betrayed you, Jungkook. I never looked at anyone else. Every humiliation I endured is not for me, it's for her, my daughter, our daughter. The silence that followed was suffocating. The city noise around them blurred into nothing. Only the sound of her sobs and his rage breathing filled the air. Jungkook reached out instinctively, his hands hovering near her arm, but she flinched back, her eyes, once soft and filled with love, now looked at him with a mixture of fear, pain, and disappointment. Don't, she whispered. Don't touch me unless you are ready to believe me. Unless you are ready to fight for us. Jungkook's chest burned with anger. Guilt clung to him. He had let his pride blind him, had pushed her into the corner where survival meant shame. And now the woman who had once smiled for him stood broken before his eyes. His voice faltered, softer now, trembling. Minhy, I. But she turned away, wiping her tears with trembling hands. I have to go. Jisoo's waiting. She started walking, her steps unsteady yet determined. Jungkook stood rooted in place, his fists clenched, his jaw tight, his heart torn apart for the first time. He saw the truth he had refused to face. Men he loved had never betrayed him. His own doubts had destroyed everything. Everything. As her silhouette faded into the night, Jungkook's chest heavy with a storm he couldn't contain. Anger, guilt, regret, and something deeper. something he had buried too long. That wasn't ever, not for a long shot. The night Jungkook had dragged Minhee out of the bar replayed in her head like a nightmare. His furious eyes, the way his grip on her wrist and burned, the disgust in his voice as he accused her of selling her dignity or it have left a deep scar. Yet what lingered even more was his final wound, spoken to a cold tone by commanding, "If you are that desperate for money, work for me instead. At least then you won't shame yourself in front of strangers." For two nights, for 2 nights, he had laid awake in the shabby rent room, watching the fragile chest rise and fall with difficulty. The little girl's cough rattled through the thin walls, breaking her mother's heart with every second. She so need treatment abroad, and no matter how much men he worked or how many humiliations she endured, the truth was cruel. She could never save enough in time. There's been thought to out accept chunk out of her, no matter how much pride she lost, no matter how coldly he treated her. If it gave Jisoo a chance at survival, she would endure everything. The next morning, when he dressed in her cleanest clothes, a faded blouse and plain skirt, and left Jisoo with an old neighbor she had come to trust. Her pulse trembled as she stood before the tall glass building glaring Jungkook Company logo. The revolving door felt like a gate to another world, one she had once belonged to as his wife, but now entered only as a desperate woman stripped of all nights. Inside, she could feel eyes following her, employees whispered, recognizing the woman who had once been their boss bride, now walking intimately as if she didn't belong. When he lowered her gaze, biting her lips to stop the sting of humiliation. When she finally reached Jungkook's office, his secretary announced her presence. The heavy doors opened, revealing Jungkook behind a polished desk, his dark suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. "You came?" he said simply. His tone neither warm nor cold, just businesslike. When he swallowed hard, I accept your order. Please let me work here." Jungkook leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing as he studied her face. "Not for yourself, I assume for the child." Her lips trembled. "For Jisoo," a muscle twitched in his jaw. "You name her so openly, so I am supposed to accept. She's mine." Pain pierced through Minhee, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm not asking you to accept her. I'm only asking for a chance to work. I will do anything. Just please, Jungkook, let me earn what I need." Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Jungkook rose from his chair, walking around the desk until he stood close. So close she could smell his cloak, the small, familiar scent that once made her trace. His eyes stretched her as if trying to uncover lies buried deep within. "Fine," he said at last. "You will work directly under as my secretary. Your salary will be generous enough to cover whatever it is you are chasing." Her heart leaped with gratitude, but before she could thank him, his voice hardened. "But understand this, Minhee. Don't mistake this for kindness. You are nothing to me anymore. You are here because I would rather keep you under my eye than watch you degrade yourself further." The words stung. Minhee lowered her head. "I understand. Thank you." The first week as Jungkook's secretary were a trial of endurance. She arrived early, staying late, handled endless paperwork, answering calls, organizing schedules, and sometimes even braving his unpredictable moods. He rarely addressed her directly unless it was about work. His tone curt and professional, but his sharp eyes followed her movement with an intensity that unsettled her. Colleagues whispered constantly. Some pitied her, others mocked quietly, questioning why the once beloved wife had turned in such a humiliating role, and he ignored them all, reminding herself each time she signed a document of fetched coffee that every second was for Jisoo. At night, when she returned home, exhaustion waned heavily, but the sight of Jisoo's fragile smile gave her strength. Oma, you look tired, the little girl would whisper, her small fingers brushing in his cheek when he would kiss her forehead gently. You must find sweetheart. Oma is working hard so you can get better. And though her body ached, her heart held firm. Jungkook, however, was far from different. Though he kept his words cold, something inside him stirred every time he saw Min. He silently endured silent insults from staff or worked tirelessly without complaint. Late at night, when the office grew quiet, he often caught himself staring at her delicate profile as she typed under the dim light, her face pale with fatigue yet didn't mind. One evening he entered the break room and found her standing alone, clutching a glass of water, her hands trembling. Before she could steady herself, the glass slipped, shattering on the floor. When he gasped, crouching quietly to clean the shafts. I'm sorry, I will stop. Jungkook's voice cut through the silence. He grabbed her wrist before she could hurt herself on the glass. His grip was firm but not harsh this time, his eyes scanning her pale face. You are overworking yourself. When he shook her head, trying to pull away. I'm fine. Please don't worry about me. But his eyes darkened. Something like anger or was it concern flashing through them. You think I don't notice? You are weaker than before. Are you even eating properly? Her lips parted, stunned for a moment. She saw the junk she had once loved. The man who had laughed with her, played with Minjun, had her clothes on cold nights, but just as quietly the warmth in his expression returned. He let go of her wrist, stepping back. Do your job, Minhy. Don't collapse in my office. Minhy lowered her gaze, hiding the tears threatening the spill. Yes, sir. The days dragged on, filled with silent battles of pride and pain. Yet slowly, cracks began to appear in Jungkook's armor. He overheard her once on the phone with the hospital, her voice breaking as she begged them for more time, promising she would bring Jisoo abroad soon. That night, Jungkook sat alone in his car, unable to shake the echo of her desperation. Another time when he fell asleep at her desk, exhaustion finally overtaking her. Jungkook entered to find her slumped over papers, her lashes damp with unshed tears. For a long moment he just watched her, this fragile yet unyielding woman who bore burden silently, refusing to bend even as life crushed her against his will, his chest tightening with something he didn't want to name. Without waking her, he draped his jacket over her shoulder and quietly left. But pride and anger still chained him. Whenever the warmth in his chest grew too strong, he would remind himself of those cursed photographs, of Jivu's venomous word, of the betrayal he believed and shattered their marriage. He could not allow himself to soften, no matter how his heart wavered. For me, however, every day was only about survival. She didn't hope for junk forgiveness anymore. She didn't dare dream of love. All she wanted was Jisoo's chance at life. So she worked tirelessly, even as her body weakened, even as the whispers cut her like knives. Because she knew this was the only path left, and though Jungkook tried to deny it, each time he looked at her, he felt the ground beneath him shift. The certainty of his anger slipped little by little. For Minhee, the security desk became both her battlefield and her shield. For Jungkook, it became a constant reminder of the love he tried and failed to bury, and both of them unknowingly stepped closer to a storm neither could escape. When Minhee agreed to become Jungkook's secretary, she did so with trembling hands and a heart that carried the weight of countless pounds. She told herself it wasn't about pride anymore. She had given that up the day she sold her wedding ring to buy medicine for Jisoo. Now everything was about survival, about giving her fragile daughter a chance to breathe without struggling, to live without the constant shadow of death hanging over her. If Jungkook offer meant spelling everyone's of dignity, then she would do it. She thought only for Jisoo, and nothing else mattered. Yet she hadn't expected Jungkook to demand more than just her presence at his office. He had looked at her with those cold, unreadable eyes and said, I almost carelessly, if you are working for me, you will live in my house again. I don't want to be questioned about where my secretary spends her night. Moving tomorrow. Her hands had stuttered, torn between dread and a small, treacherous flicker of longing. That house wasn't just walls and furniture. It was the place she had once called home. The place where her happiest memories with Jungkook and Minjun still lingered like faded photographs she couldn't throw away. To step back inside would mean reopening wounds she had barely managed to stitch together. But Minhee nodded anyway, because she couldn't risk losing the one lifeline that could secure Jisoo treatment. The next morning she arrived with nothing but two worn suitcases, one filled with her old clothes, the other with Jisoo tiny belongings. Jisoo clung to her, thin arm wrapped tightly around her neck, her little face pale but smiling at the sight of the big house. "Amma, is this our new home?" she whispered when he stood close. She didn't know what to call it anymore, home or prison, but she smiled for her daughter, brushing back her soft hair. "Yes, baby, for now this is where we will stay." Walking through the gates again was surreal. Every brick, every corner, every flower in the garden seemed unchanged, as though time had frozen in its place. Even while her life outside had crumbled, memories assaulted her. Jungkook carrying Minjin on his shoulder, their laughter echoing in the yard. The night she had sat by the window, waiting for him to come home. The birthday she had decorated with trembling excitement, only to have her happiness destroyed by Jiwoo's lies. She felt dizzy, but she forced herself to stay upright. The household staff stared at her, returned with poorly hidden whispers. Some looked sympathetic, others judgment, but speak aloud. They had seen her thrown out before, seen her beg for an instant and be ignored. Now they watched her walk back in with the sickly child in her arms, her shoulders scared but her eyes still shadowed. Jungkook met her in the living room. He stood tall, hands shoved into his pocket, his expression as hard as stone. His gaze flickered briefly to Jisoo, but instead of softness, there was only cold suspicion. "Your room is the same one you used before," he said curtly. "You will here with your daughter." He didn't even call Jisoo by name, and Minhee flinched at a distance in his voice. "Thank you," she murmured, bowing silently. Slightly, even though every part of her had ached at humiliation, she wanted to scream at him, tell him the truth, force him to listen, but she remembered the last time she had tried, his anger, his refusal, the way he had chosen lies over her tears, and so she swallowed the words again, locking them in her chest like a secret poison. This room was prepared as still, a small bed placed beside Minhee's. Minhee busied herself unpacking, carefully laying out Jisoo's medicine and soft blankets, humming softly to her daughter. Wouldn't sense the heaviness in her heart. Jisoo touched everything with curious hands, her big eyes shining. "Oma, this house is so big. Will I get to see Oppa here?" The word stabbed Minjun, her firstborn, the son she hadn't held in her arms for 2 years. She longed to run away through the house, to find him, to hug him until he cried against her chest. But she had no right anymore. Jangu had taken that right away when he cast her out, when he believed she had betrayed him. If Minjun saw her now, what would Jungkook say? Would he pull his son away from her arms, the way he had pulled away his love? That night, Minnie sat by Jisoo's bed, watching her daughter sleep. Jisoo's breathing was shallow, her lips pale, her tiny chest rising and falling with effort. Minnie bruised her fingers lightly over her daughter's hair and whispered a silent prayer. Please, just give me the strength to endure this for her, only for her. Jungkook meanwhile paced his study restlessly. He told himself he had brought Minnie back only to keep her under control, to stop her from degrading herself further by working in a bar. The thought of her surrounded by leading men, their filthy eyes on her, had burned his inside with a fury he couldn't explain. She wasn't his anymore. He reminded himself again and again she was nothing but a liar who had ruined their marriage. Yet every time he thought of her struggling alone with a sick child, something twisted inside him, something dangerously close to guilt. When he had seen her return that morning, thinner than before, her eyes tired, yet still holding quiet strength, he had felt a pang he refused to acknowledge. And when he looked at the little girl in her arms, there had been something hauntingly familiar in the child's eyes, though he shoved the thought away before it could form fully. The days passed with uneasy silence. Minnie carried out her duties as Jungkook's secretary with flawless efficiency, typing reports, attending meetings, organizing schedules, while also caring for Jisoo every free moment she had. She spoke to Jungkook only when necessary, her voice quiet, her gaze lowered. He in turn treated her with professional coldness through his eyes, sometimes lingered on her longer when intended. Minjun eventually learned of her return. One evening, he rushed into the hallway and froze when he saw her. For a moment, the world stopped. Oma, he whispered, his little voice trembling. When his heart shattered, tears welling in her eyes. As she knelt down, opening her arms, Minjin ran to her, throwing himself into her embrace, sobbing against her chest. Oh my, I missed you. I missed you so much. Minhee held him tightly, her own tears soaking his hair. My baby, I miss you too. Every single day. She kissed his cheeks again and again, memorizing his scent, his warmth, the weight of him in her arms. It was everything she had dreamed of during the years of separation. But the moment was short-lived. Jungkook appeared at the top of the stairs, his expression dark. Minjun, it's late. Go to your room. His voice was sharp and Minjun froze. The boy looked between his parents, confusion clouding his eyes, but he obeyed reluctantly, glancing back at Minhee with sorrow. Minhee rose slowly, her head trembling. Please, she whispered, unable to stop herself. Don't take him from me again. He's my son too. Jungkook's jaw tightened. You lost the right to call him that the day you betrayed me. His words were like knives, each syllable slicing her open. She wanted to shout that it wasn't true, that Jivu had framed her, that every moment of her life had been for her family. But when she looked at his hard eyes, she saw only walls, not windows, and so she bowed her head in silence, retreating back to her room where Jisoo slept, unaware of her mother's breaking heart. Nights in Jungkook's house became battles of endurance for Minhee. She walked in the house quietly, avoiding unnecessary counters, pouring all her energy into caring for Jisoo and working tirelessly at Jungkook's side. She didn't complain when the soft treated her with cautious distance, nor when Jungkook relatives whispered clearly about her return. Every insult, every cold glance, she bore it all for Jisoo, the sake of her daughter's fragile heartbeat. But deep inside, a storm brewed. Jungkook could think that he wanted, could call her names, could doubt her forever. But one day she vowed the truth would come to light, and when it did, she wondered if he could deduct the year he had stolen from her, the love he had shattered, the family he had broken apart. For now she lived under his roof once again, in the shadow of their past, carrying secrets in her chest like burning coals. And though she looked calm on the outside, her soul whispered the promise every night as she kissed Frisso's forehead. I will endure everything for you, always for you. Moving back into Jungkook house, but Jisoo should have been a sign of hope, but from in soon turned into a battlefield she had never imagined. At first, she had thought that being near Jungkook, having a roof over her daughter's head, and being closer to Minjun would somehow help her broken family heal. But the house she entered was not one of warmth and acceptance. It was the one where daggers of words were thrown every day, slicing through her fragile strength little by little. Jungkook's mother was the first to show her disdain. The moment when he carried Jisoo into the living room, her mother-in-law's eyes had narrowed sharply. You really had the nerve to come back here after everything you have done, she spat, her voice cold and dripping with judgment. Minnie had lowered her head, refusing to argue. Before the truth of her situation was bitter, she needed shelter for Jisoo's sake, not for her own pride. Every morning she woke early, cooking and cleaning silently, ensuring Jisoo had her medicines, and preparing meals that no one acknowledged. If she entered the dining room with a tray, Jungkook's mother would scroll, push the plate away, and say, "You think cooking makes up for your shamelessness? You're only here because my son pities you. Don't think you belong." Jiwoo, on the other hand, had perfected the art of subtle poison. She never insulted Minhee outright in front of Jungkook, but her smiles were sharp and her whispers poisonous. She often sat close to Minjun, the little boy who was Minhee's lifeline, and whispered stories that made his young heart distrust his own mother. "Do you know, Minjun?" Jiwoo would coo as she stroked his hair. "Your mother? Your mother doesn't really love you anymore. She have a daughter now, and she left you and went to live happily with another man. The little girl she brought here, that's her child. She cares more about her than you." At first, Minjun had denied it. "No, my mommy love you. She used to tuck me in every night." But Jiwoo never gave up. Each day she planted seeds of doubt, adding, "Why do you think she never came to see you for so long? Why did she hide from you at the gate when she came back? A real mother never leaves her child." The boy's heart, fragile and confused, began to waver. Slowly, Minhee noticed the distance. Minju no longer ran into her arms when she called him. He no longer begged to sit with her at dining or ask for bedtime story. Instead, he clung to Jiwoo's side, watching Minhee with very uncertain eyes. Minhee's heart broke every time she saw it. She wanted to reach out, to hug her son tightly, and tell him the truth. But Jiwoo was always there, poisoning his mind, while Jungkook stood aside, oblivious or unwilling to interfere. Minhee had never known a deeper pain than see her own child turn away from her, rejecting her love because of someone else's lies. Life became unbearable in the mansion. Each day was another trial of humiliation. Hope you all guys like the video. Please like, subscribe, and share to my channel. And tell me in comment section. You guys will comment, and I will post my videos on my channel yesterday. Okay, bye bye.